And that will start us off. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We're really looking forward to kicking off this user group meeting on AEM Sites and Adobe Learning Manager. The purpose of these newly launched user groups is really just to give all AEM users, regardless of your expertise level, the opportunity to connect, exchange best practices with your peers, and have your toughest questions answered. We have some Adobe experts on the line, Alan Partridge and Jason Jones. So I really encourage you to come with your questions and make this an interactive session. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Alan to start the meeting.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you for joining today. I am Dr. Alan Partridge. I am the Director of Evangelism for Adobe's DALP group, which is digital advertising, learning, and publishing. And I'm thrilled to be here with you all and to tell you a little bit about Adobe Learning Manager today. And then Jason will come in and give you a demo of the integrated technology. It is absolutely the case that digital learning is the future, and it spreads across organizations in a really huge variety of ways. When we think about the world that we're moving into, it's easy to understand that we grow closer and closer to that moment of singularity, right? We're constantly encroaching on occasions where understanding everything that you need to understand in order to be successful becomes more and more of a challenge. And organizations are finding that they have to train more and more people for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes that's internal training, like learning in order to do your job or to do your job more efficiently or to solve the problems that are on your plate. Sometimes that's learning that goes beyond the organization. Things like partner training and enabling sales teams and others, maybe working with franchisees. And other times it's working with customers, whether those are B2B customers or B2C customers, all the way down the line. There are often cases where learning and education, especially digital learning, becomes really critical to success. And that's why Adobe has really embraced learning management technology that makes it easier to handle all of these kinds of learning experiences, whether it's for L&D, whether it's for the customer experience, whether it's for sales enablement, whether it's to augment existing marketing. There are huge opportunities here, but they're opportunities that aren't really well met by traditional learning management systems. So if you look at the industry as a whole, we can see pretty easily that 73% of all enterprises out there identify compliance training as one of their top training content spaces where they're doing this kind of work. And this is, regulatory based kinds of training materials. And the case is very common that they struggle to get full buy-in or participation in those kind of compliance or onboarding or similar kinds of internal training materials, in spite of the fact that more and more their employees are identifying education as a space which is not really being well met. And so you end up with this sort of strange paradox, but it makes a lot of sense from the perspective of the employee, right? Like if we think about what are our perceptions about internal training and learning, for most of us, it's a hassle. It's outside of the scope of our regular work, and so we tend to not want to embrace it. Now, 58% of enterprises provide some form of training to their customers. So that goes well beyond the scope of what we think about when we're thinking about traditional training and learning experiences. But it's important to note that there's a lot of overlap there. And so as is the case with most situations, when you have technology that kind of overlaps but kind of doesn't do so in a convenient way for multiple audiences, it really is an opportunity to optimize your workflows and to take advantage of formats, reporting methods, and other kinds of structures that can be similar enough, but that need to be augmented in order to fit the needs of those individual audiences. You'll see there also that 94% of employees stay at a company longer if that company is well invested in L&D. And I think these are just the hallmarks of a new sort of way of looking at what kinds of opportunities exist around learning. And Adobe's identified that and is introducing a new solution called Adobe Learning Manager. Now, Adobe Learning Manager is effectively a solution which allows you to train customers. It allows you to train partners and sales teams, and it also allows you to train employees. It gives you a solution to deliver training and learning materials across these wide audiences, but it does it in a way which is different than conventional learning management platforms in that it's facilitating the specific needs of each of those spaces. The big secrets here are that the Adobe Learning Manager system has been built in such a way that it's far more flexible and much more easy to extend and customize than a typical kind of solution for learning needs and learning problems. And so when we look at it today, you're going to see as Jason walks us through it, that what's happening is that the learning platform can be called in many different ways through lots of different lenses in order for you to see a solution which is very customizable to the needs of your organization. Let me give you a couple of examples. For a lot of people in HR L&D, one of the problems that they face is that their learning platform sort of shuffles people back into another kind of system, another platform. And that system doesn't really allow those people to have an experience which is consistent with your brand. It's an experience which is often not consistent with your expectations, and it's usually not very engaging. It's usually dated, feels kind of lackluster, and it doesn't fit in. And so for folks who are trying to provide great solutions for upskilling and reskilling employees, for solving compliance problems and the like, they're facing all kinds of obstacles out of the gate. And those problems are very real in an environment where you need people to learn more faster and faster. So they often are finding themselves saying, hey, can't we leverage some of the technologies of our marketing solutions? Can't we leverage some of the existing assets and materials that exist for us to have internal outreach and at the same time provide a kind of common experience for people in our organization? Let's say, for example, you have people in your organization who are coming into a common watering hole. Maybe everybody who's in engineering in your organization lands on a common web front end. And that web front end is a portal which customizes itself to meet the needs of those individuals in, let's say, engineering space. Well, if you have a learning initiative that you specifically are targeting your engineers for, maybe it's something like you want to expand AI awareness and general training for all of your engineering personnel, or maybe even some targeted group, it would be much easier and much more intuitive if that experience, that learning experience, just presented itself to those personnel who need it in the portal that they're already visiting, without having to go launch off into the back end, go digging for materials, exploring that kind of thing. Instead, they could simply consume it. And that could be consumed as micro learning right there in the portal. That could be consumed as a series of choices related to the kinds of material that are available. All of those things presenting themselves within the context of your existing CMS. Similarly, when you have partners or when you have franchisees or you have sales teams, et cetera, those teams often have similar kinds of separate portals with very different individuated needs. And so being able to provide the learning content as an injection inside of those kind of portal spaces can be a huge uplift in terms of adoption, in terms of accessibility, in terms of ease of discovery, all of those kinds of things. And you gain the advantage to work with that material in ways that you wouldn't normally have if it were some sort of, back-end learning platform that only performed that one function. Now, in the same way, organizations often need to sell or deliver some kind of content, services, or solutions to customers, either other businesses as customers or direct line customers, all the way down to an operational storefront or something like that. And there's a big reason for that. It has to do with the experience that customers have with your products and services. It can directly affect how successful you are and how well you're able to leverage your existing customer base to gain new customers. In a similar way, there are specific needs around learning that are more effectively targeted when we're talking about the customer space. And so all of those things become really relevant. So when we talk about Adobe Learning Manager, we're talking about a solution that, although the name is new, the technology is not completely new. So this is formerly known as Adobe Captivate Prime, Adobe's learning management system. This tool, this technology, was initially developed just under 6 years ago. We went live with the very first version of Adobe Captivate Prime, and it's been in continuous development since then, moving further and further into having full features across everything that would be typically associated with a kind of learning management platform. But from the onset, our engineers decided that they wanted to solve some big problems. One was that they knew to fit into the industry as a whole, they needed to be extensible from the gate. So everything in this solution is API driven. Then they further evolved that and added component kinds of solutions so that, in addition to being able to have a completely headless learning management system, which allows you to grab and pull pieces of content, whole chunks or arrays, recommendations, everything related to gamification, social badges, all that kind of stuff. You can also have a headful experience, and I'm sure Jason will talk some about that, where ultimately you can say, all right, just give me the component, so that that person who's trying to set up these portals doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. They can simply call on a whole ribbon or a whole chunk or a whole range of content based on criterion that match the kinds of situations that you're in. And at the same time, there are back-end, behind-the-scenes and tracking solutions and communication solutions to allow for integration with other tools that make for much more effective use of the fact that somebody is training. Let's say, for example, you've got customers. The customers are coming in and they're looking, actively searching for lots of content about a specific product or service that you offer. Now, because of the way it's set up, that can be integrated directly with Adobe Marketo, for example. And in that case, that customer can be seen as a lead. And all of the interactions they have with the training content become interactions that can be updated back into Marketo, which can then be used to handle campaign management and gather and act on that information based on the behavior of that cluster of customers who expressed a deep interest in a particular area or category, or who demonstrated that they wanted lots of additional information about a specific product. And you can leverage that not just for direct marketing campaigns, but also to gather information for your support and sales teams. So it's a different way of thinking about these tools that suddenly wakes up the learning platform portion and integrates it effectively into the Adobe Experience solution, and specifically integrates it into AEM Sites. So you can see and visualize this then in these terms. Think of the power of the Adobe Learning Manager as the power to be able to really directly impact the customer experience, whether that's partner training, sales training, customer education, and to have an ongoing influence in the internal employee experience for things like employee upskilling and reskilling, compliance training, or use it for projects in any one of these slots. So it provides a really powerful new kind of option that integrates effectively into the overall pipe and that goes straight into AEM Sites, so that you can effortlessly build this content. And again, here in a minute, Jason's going to show you what that experience looks like and how easy it is to kind of integrate those components in a headful way. And of course, you can also do it in a headless way if you want. So just to kind of drill in on one of those ideas, right? We talked about how this could be used for customer education, could also be used for internal education, could be used for partners and franchisees and so on. But if we think about this just in terms of customer education, the customer goes through this kind of journey, right? Initially, you're concerned with awareness. And at that point, you may well want to inject educational or training related materials so that the customer's awareness expands, right? This is a kind of a soft sell approach or a knowledge awareness approach where you're saying, hey, learn about, let's pretend that we're in the beauty products space and we want them to learn about how to apply makeup or learn about the details about how to do some other function, right? And that's going to augment the effectiveness of our product because our product, if applied incorrectly, will cause problems, right? It may cause legal problems in the extreme if they, start applying it to surfaces it wasn't meant to be applied to. It could cause problems in terms of improper use, not yielding the result that the customer wants. And that works across all different industries. Now they're going to go into a kind of consideration phase. And so at that point, it can often be beneficial to provide broader educational information to customers to help them understand the relationship they have with your organization as one where you're prepared to help them meet their needs. You're focused on what their needs are, and along the way, you're delivering information around your products and services. Then going beyond that, it can also be a part of that purchasing decision in that moment, and everything beyond the commitment or the purchase point is now an opportunity for you to further educate the customer, guaranteeing that they're more effectively utilizing the tools and services, that they're realizing the value, but also moments where you can inject messaging, right? Think about the case where customers purchase things but don't adopt it effectively. So now you're getting pushback from a large customer, for example, who says, hey, we invested in this solution you sold us, but down the line, how do I know it's of any use to my employees at all? Well, by having these integrated moments, you're able to open windows there, right? So that when you see that a person is investigating or learning about specific functionality, you can use that moment to reinforce the value, to effectively after sale market the value to that customer who's already in your pipe. You can also use it as an introductory space to upsell that customer for potential future kinds of opportunities. It can dramatically affect retention. We know that customers who don't understand the things that they're purchasing are far less likely to renew that kind of service or product. And we understand that ultimately it's going to lead to a diminishment in their appreciation for your brand and your products. It can also lead directly to advocacy because customers who have great educational experiences share those experiences more freely because they don't see that as a marketing experience. They see it as an education experience. And that's key, that you get to have this kind of stealth marketing experience built right into your pipe that's providing you information that's actionable that can improve your overall experience. And at the same time, you get to have customers be the advocates themselves because they're not shy about sharing things that are educational and in nature with other customers. So some really cool opportunities here. Now, we talked briefly about how this can allow you to completely reimagine or inject different kinds of experiences into the pipeline, right? So we have a number of customers who use the current solution in very, very different ways. Those customers use it to create experiences for different purposes, for individual projects, for portals, all of those kinds of things. Why are they using it so broadly? Well, because in a modern learning experience, you want to have things like discussions. You want to have news articles and updates. You want to have upcoming user events, product training, certifications, AI-based learning recommendations, gamification. You also want to have things often like scheduled instructor-led training and virtual instructor-led training. And so this is really the avenue by which all of those things can come together under a common watering hole, under a common portal experience. They can be designed and developed to look like and feel like whatever it is that you want that experience to be for your customers and users, and it can be delivered in a very convenient way, something that the experience is on brand, that it's in the moment, makes a lot of sense, and that fits into your existing pipeline, especially fits into your AEM Sites pipeline. So with that, I will pass the baton over to Jason, who's going to show you a little bit about what this technology looks like when we integrate it with AEM Sites. Take it away,
Thanks.
Jason.
Thank you, Alan. And folks, it's a pleasure to meet all of you. My name is Jason Jones. I'm a principal focusing on AEM. I've been with Adobe for 16 years, and honestly, it is my horror today to have to follow Alan, because that was a great discussion, Alan, and really appreciate that lead in. So my role is really to walk you through the technical side of this today, and how does this actually work with AEM, and how would you be able to work with it to create a Headful experience, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today, but we can also talk a little bit about Headless as well. So what's the plan during the demonstration? And this is essentially the only slide you're going to see from me today. We're going to go directly into AEM here in a moment. But I want to do a little bit of a level set so you can see what we're working with. We're going to be going through an experience called Zolosoft, or the actual company is called Zolosoft, and it's a financial services company. And so it's going to bring out some of those things that Alan was talking about, of leveraging it really for not only as an internal learner, but also as a customer that could be coming in and looking for specific information around products, and maybe needing to start some kind of account. And then ultimately we want to start creating like drip campaigns and things along those lines to be able to service that customer and start managing their journey with us as a institution. So that's Zolosoft. We're going to see a little bit of that here in a bit. We're going to talk about some of the standards-based information around our player, as well as the personalization and AI that's coming into play. We're going to talk about some of those opportunities that Alan also alluded to, of creating like top of the funnel opportunities, as well as leveraging some of the data for campaigns. And then we're going to go into the authoring experience, so you can actually see some of the authoring experience and how you go in and leverage the components. So without further ado, let's get out of the slides here and let's actually go do something fun. Okay, so what we're looking at right now, for the folks that don't know, is the AEM interface. And just so you know, AEM stands for Adobe Experience Manager. I'm sure most of you know that, but if you don't, if I use any TLAs or XTLAs, which are 3-letter acronyms or extended 3-letter acronyms that you don't know, any Adobe lingo, feel free to throw it in chat or raise your hand or ask a question and come off of mute. It's a small enough audience that happy to take questions or redirect as we go through here. So we're looking at AEM Sites right now, and we'll see we have a site described down here, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but we're going to drill down to is the actual login page. So I'm going to click edit, and obviously we need some type of authentication here, because we need to know who this individual is and how we're going to personalize against them. We need to tie all that together. So there is authentication tied into this demonstration. So what I'm going to do, actually let me close that out, is click in, and we're going to view this as published. So this is what the authentication screen looks like. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And when I click the sign in, now we're going to be presented for the secured area of Zolosoft. And obviously branded experience, right? We got the Zolosoft logo and everything else. We're not seeing Adobe Learning Manager or the learning platform. This is their brand, and they're able to manage this content. And it's part content coming from the LMS, the learning management system or the learning platform, as well as content that in components that are coming directly from AEM. So images and heroes and teasers and all the stuff that you're used to working with inside of AEM, leveraged together along with these new components for leveraging the learning platform. Okay. So if I scroll down here, we're going to see the first introduction of that, which is my learning list. And this is a ribbon of learning that has either been assigned to me, or I've went and subscribed to it or registered for it. And we can see it's completely interactive. As I scroll through here, we'll see a number of different courses that are available to me in all those different tiles. And it's also keeping track of the information of where I am inside of that course, right? So it knows that I need to continue or start, whatever the case may be. Now, all that data is in the LMS, right? As far as AEM's concerned, we're the screen or the glass to the LMS. So we're this portal interface and the brand and the assets and the components and all the infrastructure, but ultimately all that data is being transacted with back at the LMS level, back in the learning platform. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well when we start to discuss a little bit more about like journeys or some of that Marketo integration and et cetera. Okay. So what I'm going to do is click into one of these courses. So I'm going to go into this crypto course here. And it's going to bring up the player. Now, you'll notice there weren't any pop-ups coming up and any third-party technology, nothing goofy inside of the browser. And that's our Fluidic Player. It's all based on today's standards, HTML5, et cetera, works in all the modern browsers. But what it does allow you to do is start bringing multiple formats of content into this micro-learning experience directly inside of your brand. So whether it's PowerPoint or video where you have some type of interactive e-learning that you need to bring in, it could be quizzes, et cetera. All of that can be brought into this Fluidic Player and displayed directly inside of your portal type of experience or whatever kind of experience you're trying to do for your brand. Now, as part of that player, obviously I can go and interact, and this is a video and we'll see it start up. I can resize this. So if I need to resize it, that's great. I can do that. I can also drill back down. And again, I'm still maintained inside of that same experience that you're creating before. But I'm also able to bring in additional capabilities. So if I pop over on the side here, we'll see there's a table of contents, so I can start wherever I need to if I'm allowed to, right? But I also have the capability to go in and add notes. So again, whether it's video or whatever the content may happen to be, I'm able to take notes that are stored along with my profile and then be able to search those later on. So if I've taken many classes, obviously, like I said, I've been with Adobe 16 years, it's a lot of learning, a lot of notes. I want to be able to go in and search that and find that little tidbit of information that I took. I can do that and then be able to reference the learning that was associated along with it. Okay, so that's a little bit about the Fluidic Player as well as how it comes up automatically into this micro learning inside of this ribbon. What we're going to go past to now is really taking that to the next level, right? That was all content that was either something that I was interested in, subscribed to, or was directly assigned to me. But now we can start getting into actually the AI side of the house, right? And this is really leveraging Sensei in the end. The learning management system is taking Sensei, it's compiling your interests. We'll get in some of the peer activity in a moment, but it's compiling your interests in the things that it has seen as a learner, and it is now going in and making recommendations to you, which is what we're seeing in this ribbon, okay? And it works exactly the same way as what we just saw for what the more deliberate training that I had subscribed to or had been assigned. These are just the recommendations based on the things that I've come in and looked at, right? So whether I'm an employee and I've looked at an entire catalog, or in this case, I'm a customer coming into Zolosoft, it's going in and making recommendations based on what I've gone in and perused, okay? And again, that's all happening at the LMS level. It's not happening inside of AEM. It's happening at the LMS level. It's calling out to Sensei, and it's going in doing all those computations and then coming back with the recommended content. But in the end, it works the same way. So if I go in and I drill into this content, it's going to bring up that Fluidic Player. I can start looking at that content, interacting with it, etc. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Now, underneath that, in a similar fashion, this is recommendations based upon peer activity. So personalization, not just on me, but all the learners that are coming in. Now, again, you don't have to expose this, and we'll see this from the authoring side in a little bit, but if it's something that you want to be able to expose to further try to bring these folks into that learning environment and get them interested, it's something that you can expose to them. And again, it's using Sensei to go and grab those recommendations. Okay, so that's a little bit about some of the personalization that's happening, and it's all coming through that same component suite, which I'll show you here in just a moment. What I want to drill into briefly is some of the gamification aspects of it, as well as scheduling. So again, the LMS is running this all behind the scenes. We're going and exposing this to the learner or the customer that's coming in, but using the same component base, we're able to expose gamification. So whether it's a leaderboard or social feeds that are coming in, points that you may be assigning based upon the learning or what the achievements that they're getting, you're able to bring in those kind of leaderboards and that information to start into your portal to start creating that competitive environment if you need to be able to do that, or give them their badges so that they feel that they're progressing in their learning or in their job. So those are more elements that you can pull in beyond just the ribbons and the content we're seeing below, as well as the actual calendar. So we can see the learning calendar up here. So if we had schedule events, we'd be able to see that and subscribe to those and bring that into my direct learning ribbon. Okay, so that's a little bit more capability beyond just the ribbons. Now, if we go down below here, what I find gets really interesting, especially if you're going outside of a internal learner and you're starting to look at customers and external learners, it really doesn't matter. The recommended by Zoloft ribbon that we're seeing below is really you folks deciding, hey, as learners or as a customer, these are the things I want you to see or I want to put up in front of you. And that's kind of what Alan was talking about with advertising, right? It gives you the capability to really kind of go in and start pushing your messaging or the type of learning you want them to be able to see and starting to interact with. And that's one way you can do that is with the specific ribbon of the learning management components, which I'll show you here in a moment when we go into the authoring environment. But up above this, these are actually teasers, right? It's just a teaser inside of AEM, which is a typical component included as part of AEM. But what it's doing is it's drilling into a specific catalog in the learning management platform to bring back pieces of content that can be specific around events or a product or a launch or whatever the case may be. Okay, so this can be a top funnel activity that maybe somebody's coming in and you want them to subscribe for a service or open in an account. So start providing them information around that that makes them not only comfortable in their decision making, but also comfortable with you as a company that they want to do business with. Right. And as they're consuming that, you're also learning about them, right? What are their interests? All that type of information is flowing back, and it's not just captured inside of the LMS. We're able to extract that data and use it in other places, which I'll talk about in just a second here. Okay. So that's leveraging catalogs a little bit, as well as the assigned content recommended by Zolosoft, using it more like advertisement, not just going in and showing them content. There's different ways you can leverage this and different angles you can take, and it's really up to you and what your goals are as an organization. Okay. So last piece of this before we get into the authoring, I mentioned about the data. So all this data is being captured, right? All the interaction that I'm doing, as well as the courses that I'm viewing and my participation and all the gamification information, all that fun stuff is being captured and is actually being, you can go and report on this. And actually, if I go in here and click reports, we'll see some of the reporting information that's coming through right now based on me going in and interacting with the system. But all of this data is available to you, and not just through Adobe, through third-party systems as well. If you have something else that is not Adobe, which makes us sad, but that's okay, right? We expect that. You're able to leverage that data in those systems as well to start fleshing out campaigns, or like a drip campaign, right? You want to start, maybe somebody started some training and it's a catalog specifically around an account opening, but they didn't open up that account, right? Now you want to start hitting them 15 days later, 30 days later, whatever the case may be, and maybe going through different points of contact depending upon their needs, whether it's SMS or MMS or email or whatever the case may be. You can figure out what makes the most sense based upon their needs and their touch points, but all of that data is flowing from here. And then you're able to leverage it in external systems as well as in Adobe, like in Marketo or in AEP. If you want to start looking at doing some journey optimization, things along those lines, that data becomes available for you to be able to leverage that. Okay. So that was all about the front end and kind of that learning experience until we got into the data, obviously. Let's get into the authoring experience here. So let's go back into my environment here. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, that's the content. Let's actually go back and author. So we are going to bring up the authenticated area here. I'm just going to bring up one of the pages. We'll grab that profile page that we had here before. And we'll go into preview mode and just go to the home page that had all the ribbons on it. And click edit here. Okay, so now we're in edit mode. If you're not familiar with AEM or you haven't authored inside of Adobe Experience Manager, this is the authoring environment. Actually, everything inside of AEM is touch enabled. I'm using it with a mouse today, but it's all touch enabled. So you can do this same stuff with touch versus drag and drop. But I guess in the end, it really is drag and drop, even though you're using touch versus mouse. But in the end, it's a drag and drop environment. Okay, so to create this content in that experience that we were looking at, over here on this side, we'll see that we have assets as well as components and a number of different things that we can leverage. But essentially, to create these ribbons that we were just looking at, you're going to see a component called Adobe Learning Manager here on the side. I'm just going to drag that in. And we're going to see that pop up, and immediately it's going to say recommended by Zoloft, because that's one of the default settings for the component. And the information that we're seeing right now is actually my information, because not only am I an author or an administrator, I'm also a learner, right? So that information's coming through. So obviously, if you had this against the test environment and everything, that's the information you'd be seeing. But this allows you to get a really good preview to see what this experience is going to look like in your portal, right? Not just the AEM content or assets, but as well as the learning management content that's coming into this. So to configure this component, I'm just going to click the wrench icon. It's going to bring that up, and we're going to see this is really easy. If I want admin recommendations, I click on it. If I want my learning, let's just click on that. Okay, we're going to click on my learning, and now we're going to get the my learning ribbon, right? Really straightforward to go in and configure this. Let's say actually what we want is maybe the leaderboard for the gamification. I'm going to select that, and now we have the leaderboard. Okay, and it all behaves based upon the usual properties that you're used to, or the usual capability inside of AEM. So if we go into layout and we want to go in and change the layout for this, we can do that. So I can go in and drag this. We're not going to go through all of this, but you'll see that we're able to go in and use the regular layout capabilities, because it's based upon the core components, right? And that becomes important if you decide that you want to go headless. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do headless. Obviously, what you're seeing here is Headful. So for the folks that don't know what that means, is that essentially Adobe Experience Manager owns the experience, right? The components, essentially all that HTML output, the assets, etc. It's all being generated by Adobe Experience Manager. If you go headless, you could be using technologies like React or Angular, or it could be chatbots or IVR systems or scripts inside of some type of CRM. It's really up to you what that endpoint may be. Typically, you're going to want that content in JSON. Right, you're going to want it in kind of a data format instead of an HTML type format, and that's where headless comes in. Okay, a couple different ways you can do that. If you're mixing content along with the LMS content or the learning management system content, then this is a great way to be able to do that, because AEM can bring all of that JSON together and deliver that to you through the API. If you just need headless without AEM, obviously, then you don't need AEM as part of this. You can call the Learning Management System API and then do whatever you need to do, right? But then you'd be creating your own ribbon components and all of that kind of fun stuff as well, all right? So that's a little bit about Headful as well as Headless, and how you can go in and leverage these components inside of the environment. And just to be a good citizen here, I'm going to go in and delete this so the person behind me doesn't have to delete with my trash that I just created in there. So that's the authoring environment, okay? And as simple as what you just saw, it's just dragging and dropping that component, and that's a provided component. I'm going to show you the Git location for that in a moment. There's a package you can download for existing AEM customers, as well as the components are up on Git. So I'll show that to you in just a moment, but it's literally drag and drop configure. right? And the configuration back to the LMS is, again, just configuration. There's no development involved there. It's all screen-based configuration. There's some steps you have to go through, but it's very straightforward to go and configure the environment against the Adobe Learning Manager platform. Okay, so that is the author. Let me go back to the slides here really quick. And we will bring up this final slide here. So some of the resources that I was just speaking about, documentation's available for you. Okay. Worst case scenario, you can Google it. If you search for AEM and the Learning Manager, you'll find this. But this is the link to get there directly under helpx.adobe.com. There is also a Git repo. You can search for that as well for Captivate Prime AEM components. But this is the link for it to go directly there from GitHub if you want to go and take a look at the components. The documentation actually has the package for you to deploy, and it talks about whether you're in a cloud service environment or if you're on-prem, whatever the case may be, how you go in and do that deployment. So that's all in that documentation. If you need additional information or you want a specific demonstration or you want a hands-on lab or something along those lines, feel free to reach out to your Adobe account team, and they'll be able to help you with that and get that kind of stuff set up. And then from a AEM deep dive chapter perspective, and that's what we're doing now in this session, obviously, the next session is on April 5th, which is focused on the new AEM Headless capabilities. So to register, there's a link for that. But if you go out to aemaugs.adobe.com, you'll be able to go and find those specifically, and then you can register for that. Okay. With that, we are essentially done here. Alan, any final closing comments or anything you would like to conclude with?
No, just that, as always, a phenomenal demo, Jason. I don't know why you would be the slightest bit nervous following me, because you always do such an amazing job with the demos. It's fantastic. This is really cool tech. It opens up a world of possibilities that just didn't exist before. So I would just encourage you, if you have teams in your org that are starting to struggle with projects or the need to more effectively integrate their kind of end goal training points into your overall architecture, this is it. It really is a tremendously powerful solution. It has just so much good stuff under the hood, but the way that the engineering team has exposed it is so effortless that you really can leverage all of that conventional learning tools and usability stuff, along with the data reporting, along with the integration with other back-end marketing solutions and campaign management. It just is, it has huge potential to really empower your teams to accomplish those goals. So I hope you'll reach out to us.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We greatly appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.